Hello, I would like to thank the Adventist University of the Philippines, the department particularly that organized this continuing professional development series. I'm very happy to be part of your learning experience, and I am tasked to talk about facilitating learning in flexible learning environments. This is a series that will cover three areas. And this is facilitating learning in flexible learning environments, and we are focusing on approaches in higher education. We have some references here that we have used, and we are reviewing the literature, and we are integrating some practices to ensure that we have some basis in our discussion. So this is a product of a review of literature of what others have done and their experiences in flexible learning, and also we are integrating practical experience here based on what we did in the past. I would like to begin the presentation by this introduction that education is a precious gift that should not be taken for granted. Like every other gift we receive, this one also is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights. We are introducing flexible learning in the context of the preciousness of education because we believe that education is a gift from God we receive, and this is coming from the Father of lights. And this is the mandate of education. Education is for the transformation of human beings and their preparation for what is ahead. True education, according to Ellen White, is more than the perusal of certain course of study, more than specialization, more than achieving or obtaining a course of study. It means more than a preparation for the life that now is. It has to do with the whole being and with the whole period of existence possible to man, right? These are very important concepts. This is a lifetime experience. This is transformation of the whole being, and it extends to the whole period of man's existence. And the coverage of this true education is, we know, the whole being, physical, mental, and spiritual. And it prepares everyone for service, not only for this world, but also for the world to come. We are situating our discussion on flexible learning in that context, in this worldview, because we understand that education is a precious gift from God, and true education is not just the perusal, or it's not just the obtaining of a certain course of study. True education is just for not just for children. Looking at that, the harmonious development of the approach that is harmonious development of education is not only for children. If we say education is only for students and children, that's not what we say. It is for everyone, and we are preparing everyone for the joy of service in the world, engaging in real world challenges, and also for the world to come. I would like to um, extend our discussion, but that during this pandemic, there are various uncertainties we have experienced, like school's physical environment. How will school look like? What will school look like? Is the class attendance in person? Are we now pivoting to distance learning, or are we doing hybrid model of learning? What are the kinds of these are some uncertainties that we anticipated and we have experienced when pandemic came. The possibilities we have here is we can have decisions on possible learning models that we can use, hybrid, maybe full online, blended, and one of these is flexible learning. So when we talk about flexible learning, we would like to review some terms to begin with. When we say flexible learning, we have to situate this concept in the concept also pedagogy. Since we are talking about learning, the flexibility of learning, we cannot get away with our discussion on pedagogy. So when we say pedagogy, simply put, we say it is the examination of how knowledge and skills are imparted. So this is the how. Pedagogy is the study, the examination on how knowledge and skills are imparted. We are examining in pedagogy interactions between the teacher and the student and the learner in the learning within the learning process. Is it the best time, or is this the best time to shift into flexible education? Having learned that education is a precious gift that we can have from God, and we are emphasizing true education, and we are obligated to examine how we impart knowledge, and we have to examine also and design how we can interact with each other, both teacher and student, in the context of learning. Is this the best time to shift into flexible learning? Many schools, many universities in some places in the world have already employed the idea or implemented or adapted the idea of flexible learning. And when we talk about flexible learning, this can be both in the high school and in the collegiate level. But we have to understand that when we apply flexible education, we also have to recognize that the environment where we can apply flexible learning can be in these two spheres. We can apply it in the high school level, or we can apply it in the collegiate level. And what's the difference between learning and teaching in college or in higher education, when we compare it to school setting or basic education? In basic education, as far as preparation of is concerned, the preparation of teachers, probably those who are teaching in basic education have have been oriented at least some 60 hours in pedagogy. Learning theories are discussed, instructional design, assessment and evaluation, some areas of concentration, math, English, etc. But those who are teaching in the university, in higher education, having master's and doctorate degrees, they are prepared in very special areas of specialization, physics, math. And I think that's the difference. No, the difference, less training in college teaching. Some teach in the university or in colleges without preparation in pedagogy, without maybe background in learning theories, instructional design, assessment. The preparation in basic education to perform as practitioners. The teachers there perform as practitioners. They are consumers of knowledge generated by scholars, those in higher education, and they convey this information to students through textbooks and instructional plans. So, what they learn in the university from these higher education institutions, they are just consumers. They share those piece of information, scholarly information, to their students in basic education. And in higher education, they focus mainly on preparing, preparing themselves to perform scholarly work for generation of new information. And they publish what they have discovered, new information, in scholarly journals. In basic education, the fundamental knowledge is shared. General education is shared from K to 12. General education, the fundamental knowledge. We are developing the mental framework of students for systematic exploration of the world. Some specializations in the future. So when we say curriculum development in their side, it's top down. Um, Knowledge comes from standards. They don't have participation and development of in the arrangement of what to be taught inside the curriculum. They just have to be consumers of what is there, and they share it to their students. In higher education, it's different because the preparation of faculty, of teachers in higher education is kind of independent. They are independently functioning as adults there. Okay, and we are we are completing, right, in higher education. We complete what basic education has started. We complete the preparation for independent functioning as adults among our students. So we prepare our students for independent functioning as adults. And teachers have extensive participation in curriculum development. Like they participate in goals, development of curriculum goals, policies, and procedures. I think these are some differences, activities, functions, purpose of between higher education and basic education. But some say that the concept pedagogy, as a review, is instruction among children, and andragogy is teaching adults. But I would like to emphasize that while there is debate in literature, pedagogy, andragogy, we can still use the concept pedagogy if we define it this way: any conscious activity by one person designed to enhance learning in another. Okay? Any conscious activity, an activity done by one person, that activity is designed to enhance learning in another. When you look at the definition of pedagogy in this, it's not for basic education, for children, or for adults. We are looking at it from a generic point of view, and when we say pedagogy, when we design something, when we design an instructional plan to enhance learning of a learner, we have to have some awareness, conscious. We have to be conscious. There is consciousness there. And that one person can be the teacher. And the goal to enhance learning, that's the goal, learning. And that another is the learner. And when we say design, when we look at the word design, one person, and that designing, so any conscious activity, that activity is the designing part. We're talking about the structure, the context, the structure of the learning experience, the context of the learning experience, the content in that learning experience, the processes that take place in that learning. And this is done by the teacher, the instructor, or the designer. And andragogy, simply put, adult focused teaching approach. That's why there is a term now used by educators we call andragogy. This is adult focused teaching approach. There are approaches in teaching and learning specifically only for adults, the art and science of helping adults learn. And there are elements there that we can focus. These are the elements. Um, the elements of andragogy that differs from pedagogy is this: adults are aware already, very fully aware of the importance of learning. They have that self motivation and self direction towards learning without the guidance of the teacher, without the guidance of an instructor. Alongside, the learner can be self motivated already, self directed. Uh, and in fact, it's easy for him to transfer ideas to real life. The capability of that adult to transfer ideas to real life is there. Very motivated, and when there are um, barriers to learning, that person can manage. That's why that the design, how we help adult learn, may probably differ from how we help the youngsters in their um, learning process. Okay, the principles of andragogy. All right, adult learners. Okay, they are in fact they can be involved in the planning, no planning of planning and evaluation of instruction. They have that the they have that adult experience, no adult learners experience. They can commit mistakes, okay, and their mistakes, they reflect on their mistakes, and they can also serve those mistakes serves as basis for further learning. Right, it is problem centered. Adults solve problems. This is unique in and these are real life problems, and we talk about relevance and impact to learners lives. Adults, when they learn, they are very reflective, and they easily transfer knowledge to life, and they find what they learn relevant to life. Whereas, per observation, our young learners, those in basic education, their experiences are limited. We still have the challenge as teachers how knowledge can be used, how they will feel that knowledge is useful. Maybe they will just be very focused on obtaining grades and getting high scores, but adult learners are very concerned of the relevance of what they learn to life. All right. So as we begin our discussion here, I will talk about flexible learning, all right, in this series, our first series. So, after those foundation concepts that we have just discussed, um, let me now begin our discussion on flexible learning. This is the first part now. And then the second part, we will go to institutional system and how we can integrate, we can adapt flexible learning institution wide. What are the approaches that we will take? And then finally, in this series, we will focus on andragogy, pedagogy, how to design, how to deliver um, instruction, how to facilitate learning in higher education. So that will be our focus. Okay, so let's define first. Let's go to our first series now, which is flexible learning. Is flexible learning only an approach? That's the basic question. An approach, or is it something else? I would like to propose this in this series that flexible learning is not just an approach, an alternative approach. It is something else. The concept on flexible learning extends beyond the mere understanding that it is just a or an alternative teaching approach. By definition, flexibility means ability. This is an ability. This is an ability that we can move naturally in our change of directions. We can change directions easily, and that ability is in that concept like flexibility. In fact, in flexibility, we can compromise when appropriate. Pliability, there is that pliability, and I like this idea that it is to bend rather than to break. When we are flexible, we are bending but not necessarily breaking. So to bend rather than to break. The flexibility of open learning is reflected in the high degree of learner autonomy. See? Now, this is very related to andragogy, as you notice. So if flexibility is open learning, and it focuses on higher degree of learner autonomy, then we can say that This is naturally fit for adult learning. In higher education, we consider our learners as adults. They are not already children. Not only can they study at their own pace, but they are also free to follow their desired learning content and strategies. I believe that when one reaches some adulthood characteristics, adulthood stages, that person, that learner can follow desired learning content and strategies. He has some autonomy and at his own pace. Right? That is a working definition. And when we talk about flexible learning, there are three areas that we are considering. We learn when learners learn when they want uh, to learn, frequency, timing, duration, how they want, modes of learning, what they want. That is, learners can define what constitutes learning to them. Now, based on these learn when students want, how they want, what they want, there are five basic categories of flexibility. So those three are broken down into these areas. We have areas of time, right? We have content, access, entry requirements, instructional approach, and delivery. So we can be flexible in content. In flexible learning, we can be flexible in the areas of time. We can be flexible in the areas of content. We can be flexible in the areas of access, entry requirements. We can be flexible in instructional approach and delivery. Now, let's take a look at each of these. When we say time and date. So we can be flexible when we can start and end a module. Right? When we become flexible, time period students are able to participate. You can participate in these time periods, we can say. The pace of learning, the time when you can do assessments and evaluation. We can even, in fact, have timing in the sequencing of some coverage. When we say content, choice of topics covered. So, as we noted earlier, these students in higher education can even choose topics we can cover. And since they already have background, basic education, when they reach higher education, they already have those basic ideas and they can explore topics that they can cover. And this is where we can have some flexibility. Amount of learning activities to be done. Okay, the amount of learning activities to be done, the difficulty level of the module. Okay, or content, and assessment standards. The assessment standards, we can be flexible in these areas, and that's part of content. Let's take a look at access and requirements. We can modify access or requirements, entry requirements. There are probably modification in prerequisites, all right, so that they can participate in the module. We can adjust the prerequisites, okay, in their participation in some coverage of certain modules. Aspects of instructional approach, okay, aspects of instructional approach or design. The social organization of learning may be, we can access learning via groups, via individual activities. So that's part of it. Okay, access. How do we access information? How do we access learning? How do we access information? Can we do it individually or by groups? We can have that. Availability for support. That's also part of that. Okay, access. We can extend, we can provide more support. We can be flexible on what to give, not only giving this, but This, as probably what school or administration will say, we can only give this much, but we can provide more support. Okay, depending on how we will design it. Choice of who decides what modes of flexible learning are available. Okay, the modes, hybrid, face to face, full online. See, access, language for communication. That's part of it. Access, delivery. So we can be flexible, time, content. We can be flexible in delivery, time and place where support is available. Methods of obtaining support. Okay? Delivery. How do we deliver it? We deliver this with some flexibility. Okay? Time, place, where, when. Okay? We will deliver. Methods of obtaining support. How will we support? Or how will learners obtain such support? We can have that in the delivery side. Types of support available. We can have instructional support from technology, printed materials, etc. So places for studying, that's part of delivery. Okay, places of studying, library. We can allow learners to learn in the library, at the library, inside the classroom, at home. Delivery channels. What are the delivery channels? We can do lectures, we can have tutorials, internet, podcasts, others. These are some flexibility in our in delivery. And see, it's not just lecture. We can do other things, right? So those are the major parts. We have delivery, right? We have access and requirements. We can stretch. Okay, we can stretch. We can be flexible in those areas. Those are the categories. Flexible learning. Okay, the mode of learning, how learning occurs. Place of learning, where learning occurs. The pace of learning, when learning occurs. So the learner will be provided with flexibility in these areas, right? And the instructor, college teacher, for instance, can design a learning experience where are uh, these areas are considered in its desire, or the teacher's desire, or the schools or the university's desires to be flexible. All right, just to emphasize these areas. See, we can be open, flexibility as far as place. We have in these areas here, we have open, okay, the place. So it can be on campus, it can be off campus. So we can stretch, we can be flexible from on campus, right? We can have off campus, all right? We can be open as far as access, we can restrict, or we can be open, all right? And we can, in pace, it can be self-paced or it is time bound. So the pacing, the flexibility extends to these areas. The mode, it can be online, hybrid, or face to face, right? So the flexible learning environment is instruction and time treated as flexible resources. And it is designed to support learning. That's a flexible learning environment. Instruction, and when we say instruction, we're talking about structure, content, context, delivery, design. All right. These are the areas plus time treated as flexible resources, and they are designed to support learning. So the learning environment, the flexible learning environment is designed to support learners. Learners have clear path to success. So learners have clear path to success. Flexible learning environment, still the same. We are describing it as The learner's interests, talents, and experiences are respected and valued. And they are in this environment is invested to perform and achieve. Each learner is invested. Okay? Those who are part of this flexible learning environment are invested to perform. The professor, the teacher, the instructor is invested to perform or achieve. And the learner can understand the why, the what, and how should this be learned. But the main, so that is that is flexible learning in the context of what it is as probably a tool. But our idea of flexible learning extends from those areas of flexibility: time, content, access, delivery. There are pedagogical ideas in flexible learning that we must also consider, and these are very important. Flexible learning is not just a pedagogical innovation. Flexible learning, in flexible learning, you can explore new ideas to underpin, okay? So to underpin the imaging and reimagining of flexible learning. So there are new ideas, and thereon we can underpin our reimagining and our reshaping of flexible learning. And flexible learning must shape and support new forms of. I like these thoughts of Ryan and Tilbury, that we have to take a look, we have to consider flexible learning as these ideas should shape and support new forms of learning. So I place it in a diagram that in higher education, our our comprehensive understanding of flexible learning must influence our experience in higher education. And if that experience in higher education is in a very solid understanding of flexible learning, our students will develop new forms of thinking, right? Our students, our graduates will develop abilities, will hone abilities on how to deal with uncertainties, complexities, and changes in society. So, in the last portion of this discussion now, let's take a look at what are these ideas that go beyond our mere understanding that um, flexible learning is just a tool. Flexible learning is a pathway, right? In fact, this is not only flexible learning. Some authors will say it is flexible education. And what does it really what does it really say? Flexible learning in higher education is learner empowerment. That's very nice thought. If this is the underpinning, if this is the bedrock of flexible learning in education, we are not only considering flexible learning as a tool, as a strategy, as a method of teaching, learner empowerment. It is involvement in learning development. Here, in flexible learning in higher education as learner empowerment, the learner is a co-creator in the processes of knowledge. Okay, we are strengthening the learner. In fact, or the student, the learner, the relationships in higher education as far as teaching and learning is concerned are challenged. In fact, it's not um, one side, no, one top down, one direction relationship where the teacher is only the dispenser of knowledge. No, that can be challenged. That relationship is that can be challenged. Learner empowerment, and this is, I mean, when I take a look at this concept, this is really biblical. Moses, then the Lord said to Moses, "What is that in your hand? What is that in your hand?" Isn't that learner empowerment? That is biblical. Learner empowerment, flexible education. When we say that is learner empowerment, that is biblical. What is that in your hand? His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. You see, divine power has been granted to us. If our education is true education, we consider God there empowering each one of us. If that is the education, the flexible education that we establish, okay, there is empowerment. And He has granted to us His precious and very great promises that we can be partakers of the divine nature. You see, that is empowerment. That is biblical. Do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day, preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Very nice. That is learner empowerment. In the Bible, we already have the basis that learning is empowerment. Fear thou not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. That is empowerment. Number two, new pathways of flexible learning in higher education. Number two, future facing education. And I think the idea of seeing the future brightly, preparing for the future, is also anchored in the Bible. In flexible learning, future facing should be integrated, should be the bedrock of flexible learning. We are flexible in learning because we want our students to be prepared for the future. And this is engagement in the change process. Learners consider prospects and hopes for the future. They anticipate, they rethink, they work on alternative future scenarios because there is some future that has to be achieved, that has to be lived also with some elements of preparedness. And future facing in the education is there. It should be integrated in flexible learning. So we do not lose heart, renewed every preparing for us an eternal. We see we are preparing for some glory beyond, and that future beyond is beyond all comparison. For I know the plans I have for you. See, our flexible education was also prepare learners for the future. That's the reason why we are flexible, because we want to ensure that they understand what the future is. We want to ensure that our learners are prepared for the future. If we will be very rigid, that deprives them of the future. For I know, God says, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. If this is our context in future facing education, then that is a very nice education. Another one is decolonizing education, deconstructing dominant pedagogical views. Sometimes we think the West is just the best, or the East is the best. No, we are extending to intercultural understanding. Look at this, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. You see, we can extend intercultural understanding. We are preparing in flexible learning. We have to prepare our our students to be engaged in cultural understanding and tolerance. Um, deconstructing dominant worldviews, right? And considering the worldviews of others. This is the ability to think and work using methods and approaches which are globally sensitive. You see, we prepare our students in the context of flexible learning with the abilities, okay, to be globally sensitive. How unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation. According to Peter, after he saw the vision, he said, I should not call any person or common or unclean. See, very nice. Deconstructing, okay? Considering intercultural understanding, transformative abilities, okay? Beyond knowledge and understanding towards agency and competence. Flexible learning should lead to an outcome that the learners will have transformation, agency, and competence. Jesus is a good example of that kind of education and flexible education. Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. He grew, okay, he advanced, he drove towards, okay, wisdom, divine and human wisdom all together, blended. Stature, a term of life, physique, mature, okay, in favor with God and men, spiritual development, social dimension, in all manner, graciousness, in social dimension of life. Jesus also is an example of that kind of transformation. All right? Crossing boundaries. Flexible education should prepare our students to cross boundaries, interprofessional learning, interdisciplinary learning, cross-sectoral learning. We cross boundaries. All right? Tackling biases and differences, collaboration despite diversity. And I think when we cross boundaries, that is biblical. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached into all the world for a witness to all nations. You see, we are flexible because we prepare our learners, our graduates to go out there. And we develop in them that crossing boundaries mental framework. And we prepare them for that because here is an imperative, a divine imperative. Go and teach. Go and teach. Right? Look at Jesus in his example, how he crossed boundaries. And he was very skillful, he was very prepared to do that. The Samaritan woman at the well, John chapter 4. How is it that you, a Jew, that's what the lady said. How is it that you, a Jew, ask of me a drink? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. That is a belligerent belief in national superiority and glory. See, you are a Jew, I'm a Samaritan. No dealings. See, no dealings. The Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. How the Jews felt they were superior. All right? Jesus presented himself as the answer to their problem when the lady said, your drink. See, did Jesus give a lecture to help the woman overcome her prejudice against the Jews? No. The answer is no. Jesus presented himself as the answer to their problem. I who speak to you am he. Jesus lived to the mind of the woman above terms, above concepts, labels such as Jews or Samaritans. After that interaction, the woman said he experienced the love of Jesus. Jesus crossed that boundary. Very flexible. A learning something that he has learned. That kind of flexibility. It's not so rigid. Come see a man. See, he did not say, you are a Jew. Come see a Jew. No, he did not say, she did not say that. Come see a man who told me all that I did. Can this be the Christ? And many Samaritans from that town believed in Jesus Christ because of his crossing boundaries. That idea of flexibility, which all of us must learn. And where can we learn that? In a context of rigidity? No, a flexible education. It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves and we know that this is indeed the Savior. The Savior stayed with the Samaritans for 2 days, and many more believed because of his word. The Samaritans said, come, come stay with us. Jesus stayed 2 days. They said to the woman, it is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world. Look at that. Flexibility, crossing boundaries. Flexible learning in summary, application. We studied the application of flexible learning within our understanding of school and college teaching. And we have learned that flexibility is not only stretching time, content, access, delivery, not only a strategy, an approach, a tool, but a pathway for transformation and holistic education for learners, not only for learners, but also for us. Flexible learning has deeply rooted foundations on the Bible. We have a very sure foundation of flexible learning in the Bible. And we are called to be flexible teachers. Our systems must be flexible without compromising truth in our design in learning, in our designing of in learning environments towards the full restoration of God's image in us. That ends the first part of our presentation, and I'll see you in the next presentation.